What's up, enthusiasts? It's your boy Rob, back with another video. Let's take a look at Shadow Dark versus D&D Professor Dungeon Craft. Guys, I've also got this new setup thing. My laptop is on a little stand, and it is terrible. It's all shaky. Every time I touch it, it's wobbling. So we're gonna have to figure out something new to do about this. A new setup has to be figured out, because I cannot operate like this with what we have going on here.
I reviewed the Dungeons & Dragons 2024 Player's Handbook and Shadow Dark today on Dungeon Craft.
Let's get into it. I like this opening. I like this opening.
Deathbringer here. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and sign up for the Deathbringer RPG newsletter below.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor DM, and this channel is about role-playing games. And if you are a carbon-based life form who enjoys the clackety-clack of polyhedral dice, like and subscribe. So I just got back from...
Yeah, guys, make sure you subscribe to these content creators as I give my reactions. I mean, I wouldn't be doing anything without these guys putting all the work in, and me just being able to sit back, relax, give my 2 cents, and weighing in on how I feel as a consumer about a lot of these products. So, yeah.
Gen Con, and the big news was Wizards of the Coast released the new 2024 Player's Handbook, and Shadow Dark won 4 gold Ennies, sweeping every category for which it was nominated. Both of these...
So that's big. It's for you to be nominated in anything, and then just kind of sweep the field. That's got to speak volumes about your product. So I know the creator has to be ecstatic about the situation.
Games are Dungeons & Dragons. They use the exact same mechanics. You roll high, add your bonus, try to hit the target number. Both are high-quality games, but which is right for your table? That's the question I'll try to answer today. Now,
so one thing, guys, so the thing I always have a problem with when people are creating, and maybe we need to get a little more into this video before I start weighing in on things, but when you're building on top of an existing product, which a lot of people do, we grab inspiration from all over the place, especially in our hobby. You know, it makes you wonder, like, when someone's being showered again with accolades, like, do they really deserve it? Because what did you really create? So that's one thing I want to really hear in this review of Shadow Dark, and how much did the creator actually design that was like innovative and new, had some stuff we haven't seen before.
Special thanks to Steven Glicker over at Roll for Combat for lending me his Player's Handbook. His latest Kickstarter is for Battle Zoo Bestiary Elemental Storm, and you can go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com to receive a free Kraken Dice Locket and animated monster token when it goes on sale on September 3rd. And you'll find that link below. Before we begin, a word of explanation is in order. My Dungeon Tuber colleague, Jordan, the PH is silent, did a review of the Player's Handbook, which he had been given by Wizards of the Coast, ostensibly to do a review, and they hit him with a copyright strike. And if you get 3...
That's so messed up. That's so messed up that they give this guy the book. They want him to do the review. Maybe he did the review too early. Maybe he released the review early, I should say. And they hit him with a strike. I would be appeased.
3 copyright strikes, YouTube will take down your channel. I'm happy to report that situation has been resolved.
Oh, that's good.
Removed the strike, but Jordan took down the review anyway because he just doesn't want any more misunderstandings. And I don't want a strike. So as a result, I will be blurring the pages from the...
Look at that, man. Hasbro has all these content creators shaking in their booties. All right. That shows you the power of Hasbro and people not wanting to jeopardize anything that they've worked for, which I can completely understand. So, but you know, there's going to be some wild cards out there that's going to be like, I don't give a damn. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to put all that out there. So I would want to be one of those guys. That's what I aspire to be. So if I had a copy of the 2024 Player's Handbook, you know what I would be doing. I'd be all in it. I'd be flipping through it, reviewing it, showing any pages you guys want to see. I don't care.
The Player's Handbook. I'll show you the cover just to prove that I actually read it, but all the interior art and writing will remain obscured. Full disclosure, I was not given any remuneration or free copies in exchange for this review. Now let's get into it. The Dungeons & Dragons 2024 Player's Handbook is 384 pages, hardcover, glue binding, but a higher quality than previous versions. Shadowdark is digest-sized, hardbound, glue and stitch binding with a bookmark ribbon. The art of D&D is bright and colorful, featuring an adventuring party with a dragon. Shadowdark's is black and white. It features a drooling monster, an homage to the classic D&D module Palace of...
Now I gotta say, that Shadowdark cover looks so badass. I always like that line art style. With a lot of like cross hatching. I can't even tell in this image if there's a lot of cross hatching going on, but I kind of always love that old like classic style. It reminds me of a lot of the work from Frank Frazetta, before he would actually like, color things in, even though
the Silver Princess. The D&D end papers feature a striking black dragon on a gray background. It looks really cool. You'll have to take my word for it. Shadowdark uses these pages to print the most common rules like weapons, armors, difficulty classes.
You really can't beat that classic clean layout. It just it hits, it pops off every time.
Random name generators, the type of things the game masters would need during a game. The interior D&D art is bright and colorful with lots of characters laughing and singing, and it's got a very light-hearted superhero vibe. Shadowdark features black and white art that's a lot grimmer. There's lots of skulls and horrific monsters. It's got more of a survival horror vibe. In D&D,
so that art from Shadowdark reminds me of the White Box. If you guys are familiar with, it's like a basic D&D. The White Box it has kind of that similar art style. Probably not as dark as what we're seeing here, but again, same line art style.
You generate your 6 abilities.
And it's a cheap book, so if you want to play some basic D&D, go get you a copy of the White Box.
Scores by rolling 4d6, dropping the lowest, and consulting a chart, producing modifiers between -4 and +4. Shadowdark uses that same chart. Both games have the same core mechanic. You roll a d20, add the modifier, try to hit the target.
So nothing.
Both games use advantage and disadvantage mechanics. Races in D&D are now called species and include Aasimar, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goliath, Halfling, Human, Orc, and Tiefling. Ability score boosts come from your background, not your ancestry. Non-humans get +2, +1 bonuses, and humans get to choose 2 starting feats. Virtually every character has dark vision. Shadowdark uses ancestries, and these include Dwarf, Elf, Goblin, Half-Orc, Halfling, and Human. Dwarves are tougher with more hit points. Elves get a bonus to use ranged weapons, etc.
So nothing like we haven't seen before. And I don't think this book is going to be anything like that. I think this is going to be just a lot of what we are used to, or what we used to be used to.
You have backgrounds as well, and these backgrounds may give you a bonus in certain situations if the Game Master allows. Like there's no Ranger class. You'd be a fighter with a Ranger background, and if you were in the woods and wanted to track something, you'd say to your Game Master, hey, I have a Ranger background. Can you give me advantage? And the Game Master is free to say yes. But no one in Shadowdark can see in the dark. You need to use torches and lanterns. D&D features 12 classes, each with 4 subclasses, 48 total. You could choose a subclass when you get to 3rd level. Just about every class has a spellcaster subclass. Even fighters have the Eldritch Knight and Psi Warriors. Rangers can cast spells on 1st level now. So virtually everyone's a spellcaster, and hit points are higher. And all characters start with maximum hit points on 1st level. Shadowdark.
So that's one thing. If you guys have ever played any of the BX stuff and classic D&D, and it's really like, you guys have always heard, I'm pretty sure everyone's aware that classic D&D and its spin-offs are all like deadly. I like a game that has risk, but if players can't make it through one encounter or one combat encounter, it just doesn't seem like it would be too fun, making like 5 characters and seeing who can make it out of that first adventure and becoming like a full-fledged character.
has 4 classes: fighter, priest, thief, and wizard. Feats, here called talents, are randomly determined when you go up a level. Only priests and wizards can cast spells, and the hit points are lower. You roll for hit points. Fighters have only D8, wizards have only D4. Dungeons & Dragons includes rules for attaining 20th level, making for epic superpowered.
Now, I don't know about you guys, and if you've seen any of my old videos with me talking about D&D, you already know I don't even know if I've made it to 20th level. I think the sweet spot is kind of like that, maybe starting at 3rd and playing until maybe like 7th level. If you've got some newer players that need to get a grasp of the game, starting at 1st level, but you tend not to make it past 6th level. But at least for me and my groups, we always want to start with fresh characters after that point, or we want to jump into a whole new campaign.
Characters. Shadow Dark caps levels at 10. D&D uses spell slots, and the spells always work. In Shadow Dark, your wizard knows a certain number of spells per tier and rolls to cast. If you roll a 1, you have to roll on a mishap table, making spell casting less predictable and even dangerous.
Hello, I'm recording a video. But you're good. You're fine. I'm just going to edit this part out. So far, it looks like everything that Shadow Dark is doing, it's doing it right, at least for a person like me. It's deadly, but not too deadly. Its magic is not just something you can just sling around all willy-nilly. There are some repercussions you could face if you're rolling bad, so I like that as well. So again, it's not doing anything that's revolutionary, but at the same time, it's stepping away from being like high fantasy. It's like grittier, like low fantasy, dark fantasy setting. It's really appealing to me.
In D&D, when characters level up, they gain class features and additional feats. Shadow Dark characters gain a random additional talent.
Deathbringer here. Like the video. It really helps the channel. Thank you.
In combat, initiative is determined the same way for both games. Roll a d20, add your dex bonus. In D&D, you get a move and a bonus action. In Shadow Dark, you can move and take 1 action, which includes an attack. In D&D, you have death saves. In Shadow Dark, you have a death timer, and it works similarly, but there's an optional hardcore mode where characters can die at 0 hit points.
One thing I picked up from Dungeon World, and I got a copy of Dungeon World right here. If you guys have not played Dungeon World, or you don't have a copy of Dungeon World, even if you're not going to play it, get a copy of it, read it, and take a lot of its content and apply it to your game. You will not be sorry. So what I like to do is, once a character hits 0 HP, I'll let them roll a d6 to try to fight off death. And if they roll a 1, then the character is actually dead. Any other result, they are like incapacitated for however long until their party can collect them and take them to some place to have a ritual perform to save their lives. So
D emphasizes rules over rulings, allowing players to create very powerful characters. Feats, for example, are no longer optional, although multi-classing still is. Shadow Dark emphasizes rulings over rules, giving the Game Master alternatives for determining initiative and death mechanics. It would be fair to say D&D gives players more options, and Shadow Dark gives the Game Master more options. So here are the big D&D changes, because people want to know. Feats are no longer optional and play a greater role. Weapons now have weapon mastery features marshals can unlock. The Magic Initiate Origin feat allows you to choose which class you get your cantrips from. So you could say, I once was a druid and I cast spells charismatically, or
So that's a touch of like multi-classing, and I don't really care for multi-classing. I'm really old school at heart, and so I like for players to, you choose your class, you stay in your lane. I don't like branching off and all this other stuff, especially because it adds complexity to the game that's not necessarily needs to be there for what you're getting. So that juice is not worth the squeeze half the time, because in a lot of situations, players don't actually know how to multi-class properly, and they're usually just asking more questions or they're confused about it. So yeah, stay away from multi-classing, guys. It's not worth your time.
I cast spells wisely. But at 6 of one, half dozen of another, you're just going to choose your best stat. Again, drinking a healing potion is now a bonus action that was imported from Larian's Baldur's Gate 2 or 3 or whatever it was.
Which I still don't agree with that. You shouldn't even be able to drink any sort of healing potion during combat. That's... Nah.
5, you only get one spell with a slot per turn, which I think is a good change. No more of that giving your wizard a couple of levels in fighter so you can get an action surge and cast an extra spell. They closed that loophole. And the new heroic advantage rolls allow you to just simply re-roll a die, which is the way most people were playing it anyway.
Right.
The biggest difference is with Shadow Dark. Shadow Dark isn't just a player's handbook. It's also a game master's guide and monster manual.
So you know what that means, guys. You are saving yourself easily. I don't know the exact price for Shadow Dark, but you're going to be saving yourself anywhere from $50 to $100 possibly. If you guys are new to D&D or you're thinking about playing role-playing games or anything like that, with D&D, you've got the player handbook, you've got the DMG, the Dungeon Master Guide, and the Monster Manual. It's 3 books, usually around $49 a piece. Personally, I usually just skim the DMG, just finding little random things that I might take some inspiration from, but it's honestly never worth the purchase unless you've never run a game before or have not actually played a game before and you have no idea how to run a role-playing game, in which case I would say don't even run D&D. Go get something that's a little simpler to run on your own, or just go get a beginner's box and it should teach you all you need to know about running a game. But the DMG, I feel like, is usually somewhat a waste of money.
Shadow Dark has a reputation for being a dungeon-based game, but this isn't true. There are random encounters for the Arctic, deserts, forests, grasslands, jungles, mountains, cities, towns, and taverns, and about 200 monsters. This book avoids the D&D trademark, so sturges are stingbats, and beholders are called ten-eyed oracles, but they're the same thing. On D&D Beyond, you can pre-order the 3 core rule books and get the PDF version for a little under $150. Shadow Dark contains all the rules in one book, and it retails for about $55. Now,
so that's a big difference, guys. Honestly, unless you are just adamant about playing D&D, I would actually push you towards just getting a copy of Shadow Dark, unless you just know, hey, if I get Shadow Dark, my group's not going to want to play it because they want D&D. That's what they know, and they don't want to deviate from D&D. But Shadow Dark is a very enticing price for you guys. I mean, $50, $60. I mean, that's pretty good. To get all 3 books in one, can't beat that. Now with D&D, they usually stagger their releases, so you buying the player's handbook in September, you've got maybe a month to save up or whatever it is, or at least not feel the sting of getting the Monster Manual or the DMG, whichever comes out next. I think it's usually the Monster Manual that comes out next. I could be wrong about that. For whatever reason, whenever I kind of refer something to you guys, I always feel like I got to like turn around, grab it off my shelf, and then just like show it to you. I'm not going to do that this time, but it's back there. Basic Fantasy is similar to what you're kind of getting from Shadow Dark, and it's an even better price. The designers of that, which I mean it's just D&D, but or old school D&D, basically are giving you the book for free. You can actually download the PDF for free, and if you want a physical copy, you're paying like maybe $8 for the physical book from Amazon or any other print-on-demand sources, and you're up and running. So that's a viable option that I would encourage anyone that wants to get into role-playing or just want to try something new that's not too different. Like maybe you have an idea of D&D and you want to stay close to that. Through White Box, like I said, that's like a $6 book. That's like a $6 book. Basic Fantasy is like an $8 book. It's all D&D, OSR style, and you're up and running. One book is all you need.
Because people have asked, is this new version of D&D backwards compatible, and what does that mean? The answer is yes, and it means
what does backwards compatible mean for a role-playing game? I mean, it's make-believe, so it's all backwards compatible or forwards compatible, whatever you want it to be.
When you use the D&D Beyond character generator app, it's going to default to the new rules. So you can rebuild all your old characters from level 1 and the computer will do it for you. Honestly, this reminds me of the difference between first and second edition, which I lived through. I designed adventure modules for the second edition, and here's the secret: I never bought the second edition. I used the stat blocks from the first edition, and it worked out fine. Nobody at TSR ever called me out on it, and it's the same here. I think.
Yeah, guys, don't overburden yourself with all this conversion mess. Listen, man, all these numbers, just listen. You can look at a stat block and say, okay, well, I'm using this system now. Is this creature, is it strong, medium, weak, whatever, and just kind of move accordingly. Sometimes I'll even just grab a similar monster from, if I'm using one rule set and I want to switch over to a different rule set and I want to carry over certain antagonists, and I've already got all their stat blocks set in my previous system, I'll find something similar into this new system that I'm going to, and your players are none the wiser. So guys, don't feel like you've got to sit there and crunch all these numbers and you got to make sure everything is lining up perfect, when half the time your players, they don't have an insight on what's going on behind the scenes. They're only on the front end of everything. So as long as your presentation is solid, you guys are good to go. Save yourself the headache.
I think these rules are clearer and even better written, and they close a lot of loopholes. I'm looking at you, Silvery Barbs. That spell isn't in this book. Which version of the game do you choose? Well, that's up to you and your players. D&D is great if you want options, customization, and high-level play, and, to be honest, a character that can't die. Yeah, it's within the realm of possibility, but it's almost never going to happen. You also get the brand, the history, and the official lore, and the digital tools from D&D Beyond, including the character generator and the upcoming Sigil VTT. Shadowdark is a lot more like...
So let's stop real quick, because I want to talk about these digital tools that we're all going to be, we're going to grow accustomed to. Times are changing, guys. Everyone's going to be playing virtual tabletop at some point. So I think about this with, my kids. If they decide to play D&D with their kids, they're only going to, they're using miniatures now because I use miniatures, but, who's to say down the line? Maybe the tangible things aren't as important to the newer generation, so they don't need to have all the miniatures and all the terrain. I'm finding myself now that I'm wanting kind of a smaller footprint as I get older. So I think a lot of this digital content and assets is going to be a good thing. It's probably the same thing when people were migrating over from a theater of the mind to miniatures on a grander scale. So it's just the way of the times, man.
The classic BX D&D and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons I grew up with, played in the 80s, and you see on Stranger Things. It's simpler, it's faster. I rolled up a character and played at Gen Con. It literally took 2 minutes. No, the characters can't progress beyond 10th level, but do they really need to? Wizards of the Coast's own data shows 95% of the player characters never make it past 7th level. And I prefer games where it's more dangerous and the characters are more vulnerable and have fewer hit points. I also don't need all the subclasses. Like there's a dancing bard and a glamour bard. In all my fantasies, I've never...
Yeah, that's getting kind of weird to me. I think a lot of that stuff you can just role play. I don't think I need rules for a dancing bard. It's just like, hey, listen, he got rid of the loot and he's a ballerina. Roll with it.
Said, you know what this game needs? Like a river dance bard. Full disclosure, I've seen river dance and my wife loves it, but I don't need a character that tap dances. Shadowdark is more utilitarian. This book is a tool. It fits easily onto any shelf. The ribbon allows me to flip directly to the page I need. And people have asked me, what's the difference between Shadowdark and every other OSR retro clone? It's a good question. This book won the Ennie for layout and design. Every concept, every idea, every mechanic is presented on facing pages. Like, this is the fighter, this is the thief. It doesn't continue over onto the next page.
I don't really care about that. That's fine. I guess that's aesthetically pleasing, but I mean, I got to read it all anyway, so.
I can flip to a random page. This is the carousing table, facing pages, so you don't have to flip, making this book super efficient and easy to use. Indulge me with an analogy. I'm not just a D&D nerd, I'm also a watch nerd. And I always wanted a Rolex Submariner like Sean Connery wore as James Bond in Goldfinger, window, and two-tone gold bracelet.
I'm not a watch guy, really, guys. I'm that guy that will get something. I'm pretty much with anything I buy. I kind of get it, and like I've got my Apple Watch, and I just wear it, and I may change the band like once a year, and it's usually just from white to black and then back to the other color. So I'm very simple when it comes to a lot of that stuff. I don't really care for the bling.
Shadow Dark is the tutor to D&D's Rolex. It's more tooly, more efficient, less complicated, and a lot less expensive. It's the game that we played back in the 80s in everything but name. But some collectors want that Rolex. They like the brand and the history and the latest complications. And some players want the official D&D brand and all the latest options. Rolex.
You're always going to get that, guys. You're always going to have those people that just want to play whatever the mainstream is, and that's cool, man. Everybody has their own cup of tea. I mean, I can't say that I wasn't that person in that beginning of my hobby career, as in like I was introduced to D&D first. 3.5 was my first edition of D&D, and that's all I really knew until I got 4th edition, and actually preferred 4th edition. You guys already know this story, and I enjoy 5th edition. But I did not want to, I can't say I didn't want to branch out for quite some time. I just didn't have the group around me to want to or encourage me to branch out. So that's a big thing. And that's why I have been solo role playing. And I really want to actually do something with that now. I will at some point, as far as bring you guys some solo role playing content. Maybe on this channel, maybe on a different channel. Well, that is left to be said. But yeah, let's keep going.
Makes a great watch, and Dungeons & Dragons makes a great game. It's not the same game I played as a kid, but if the legacy and the lore and the history means something to you, then you might prefer official D&D. That's up to you and your group. Let me know which version you prefer and why in the comments below. Also below, you'll find links to Dungeon Craft Patreon, where you can support the channel and get bonus content, my Deathbringer newsletter, and the games I reviewed today. Until the next time, happy gaming, and may all your rolls be 20.
Guys, so that's the video. I want to thank you for sitting here through this entire thing with me as we just react to Shadow Dark versus the 2024 PHP. And guys, go ahead and make sure you subscribe to their channel, Dungeon Craft's channel, I should say. And also, if you've not subscribed to Table Salt, go ahead and do that. Also, look down in the description for some other links. Join all the different groups that I have and chat with me. One day we're going to do this live, and when we do this live, it's going to be lit up. All right, guys, that's it for me. As always, I will see you when I see you.